I'm Corbett Wall with DVAuction, here with your feeder flash for Thursday, March the 27th, brought to you in part by Legacy Beef Cooperative. Become a member of the Legacy Beef Co-op, which will own a 20% stake in Cattleman's Heritage Beef, being constructed just outside of Council Bluffs, Iowa there. They are in their third of 5 investment rounds, and for just $10, you can reserve your spot to harvest one of your animals. For more information, get a hold of James Timmerman. Go on to legacybeefcoop.com. Giddy up beef. We need the beef to keep going here, and we've really seen it surge. We saw it go up over $8 on Tuesday. It went up over $3 on Wednesday, and it is really spiking here, and we need that beef to giddy up and go on around the cattle market there and lead it out. Sitting at well over $338 now. Well, we had some fat cattle dressed last week as high as $343, so we'd sure feel better if we got that choice box beef up over $340 and well on its way to $350, which could happen. We'll just have to see, but keep going beef. We need it to keep rolling, or we won't be able to keep these fat cattle going higher every week. But the guys that are looking to sell fat cattle, we still really haven't seen any sales of enough to establish a market. Now, we've got basis jumpers. I told you all about them on our last visit, and I told you they were going to be kind of a pain this week as they throw in the towel and give up easily with your spot April live cattle futures still kind of struggling. Now, it's not quite as big, the basis wasn't quite as big as it was after Tuesday's session, but after Wednesday's session it was up 70 cents is all, and we were looking at a $6 plus basis there, so still a pretty sizable basis. But the guys, especially in the northern plains, that are feeling like we can gain significant ground again in the market, they'd rather have the market than the basis. So they're not paying too much attention to your cattle futures there. But not only do they have to stave off the basis jumpers and are worried about them, of course, pack of retaliation is real. So if they're trying to get 218 for some cattle in the northern plains that are really good, and then all of a sudden they get some weak sisters trading at 213, they may let the guy that was trying to get the 218 set, and he may not be able to get his cattle scheduled now, because that's what happens. That's real. But they are so short bought, I don't think we're going to have a problem with that this week. So stay tough, guys. Dig in, get all you can, and don't let those basis jumpers scare you. They still need your cattle. They're going to need cattle. The next week they're going to be needing cattle for next week, and so just try to dig in and get as much as you totally can here. We are gaining market position. It's very, very important that you continue to gain market position. I know you're looking at your bottom line just on your in your personal books there, looking at your cattle, but for the good of the industry, let's get this cattle market as high as we can possibly get it. Our slaughter has turned out to be much more aggressive this week than what we had first thought, because last week was pretty darn light there with the interruptions from the high winds and the blizzards and the road closures and all that kind of thing. So we're seeing them get right back after your slaughter. They need cattle for that, and so they're getting aggressive on these cattle. They're likely going to need some cattle here to finish up this week. But one thing I saw that was kind of curious is our real-time index, which is by far the best precursor for what happens with your CME cash feeder cattle index. Real-time index has just been gaining leaps and bounds here every day, pretty much for the last 3 weeks or so. And since the CME cash feeder cattle index come out the last time, your real-time index has gained $2, and I'm talking about based on an 800-pound cash steer there. And all of a sudden, right here at maturity of your March feeder cattle futures, your CME cash feeder cattle index goes down 35 cents. Now what gives on that? Where did they get the lower markets? Every sale barn in the country is higher, dollars and dollars higher, and all of a sudden your CME cash feeder cattle index is 35 cents lower, backed right in there to your March feeder cattle contract here, right as it matures. I don't know where that came from, and they're not entering direct sales in the middle of the week typically. I'm just really curious about that. And used to, you could go onto CME's website and you could go in there and see what all the prices were that they pulled from all the contributing sale barns. But now they want you to pay for everything. CME wants you to pay for everything. They won't even give you daily closes or settlements without making you pay for them. So it's kind of ridiculous. You can't even see where the hell you're at on that deal because they're just money grubbing, and they don't really care what goes on. They leave your cattle futures open for the short side because that's where they're getting the most action. So they just leave it for them. Don't ever throw a bone to the long side to try to shore that market back up. Just pretty hoggish the way that they're operating that deal right there. But let's talk about that board for Wednesday. April live cattle futures were up 70 cents at 207.07, and we got the biggest open interest, or the biggest amount of contracts in your cattle futures we've seen in 6 years. So there's a lot of play in there right now. Got some uncertainty with some of your other publicly traded markets. So some investors are thinking that's a good place to stick money is in your cattle futures. June was up 70 cents also at 203.02, and your back months were all higher, but not much, from a dime to 52 cents higher. March feeder cattle down 17 cents at 286.80. April was up 102 at 285.87, and your back months on your feeder cattle contracts were all up big, 82 cents to $1.25 higher. Your May corn was down 6.5 cents a bushel at 451.25. Beans for May down 3/4 cent at 10.01, and hard red winter wheat for May down 4.25 cents a bushel at 565. Fat cattle trade, and like I said, we really haven't seen too much develop. Few hundred here, few hundred there. We got some weak sisters and basis jumpers that are not really trying to work with everybody else to try to get more money in the market. They're just worried about their own particular self. It's kind of like whenever your kid comes home with a bad grade on your report card, and they said, well, everybody else got a bad grade too. Not worried about everybody else, just by myself, but just my own student. But Iowa sold 1,200 head, 2,100 for the week, so they've sold a few, and the only price that they posted on Wednesday was $213. The market's better than that, but pretty good deal if your basis jumping there. Nebraska sold a load on Wednesday. They'd sold as much as 400 this week. Their price on live sales on Wednesday was $213 also. Now, both Iowa and Nebraska had sold dress sales earlier this week from $330 to $334. So it's a long ways from the tops of last week's price spread. But you see what I mean by the basis jumpers. Kansas didn't sell anything on Wednesday. They had sold 700 earlier in the week from 207 to 208 when the market's 210. But they're just jumping at the basis. Texas has not sold a hoof yet, direct basis this week. A couple of fat cattle auctions. Sioux Falls Regional Livestock in Worthing, South Dakota had 1,040 head of slaughter cattle there at their auction, including all classes. Conventional fed cattle sold 208 to 213. That was $3 to $5 higher than last week. Program cattle in Worthing, South Dakota sell from 210 to 215.50. Glacial Lakes livestock in Watertown, South Dakota, $4 to $6 higher on 800 head of slaughter cattle. Conventional fed cattle selling from 203 to 210. In Watertown, program cattle from 208 to 216. They had some Holstein fed cattle there from 170 to 193. and your big fat fed cows from 148 to 158 in Watertown, South Dakota. Box beef cutout values that I mentioned earlier, higher, quite a bit higher there on Wednesday's session, and Wednesday afternoon ended at 338.30 on the choice. That was up 311. Selects ended at 316.53, up 248. Your slaughter looking really aggressive. Your estimated cattle slaughter up through the first 3 days of this week, 366,000. That's 40,000 more than your blizzard interrupted week last week, and still 3,000 more than the same week a year ago, which is impressive. Talk about what else is going on. Coffeyville Stockyards, the Northtown barn, they've sold or closed the Southtown Oklahoma barn, but the Coffeyville Kansas barn is still humming right along, and they've got a big spring video coming up here pretty quick. It's going to be Friday, April the 4th. They've got a good selection on there. It's going to be at 6 o'clock in the evening in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So be thinking about that. They're going to have a lot of direct cattle there coming out of that Osage region there, and be thinking about that sale. It's going to be on DVAuction.com. They broadcast with us. We support them, Tylen, Layton, and the whole gang there. But don't forget about Coffeyville Stockyard spring video coming up here Friday, April the 4th, 6 o'clock p.m. Let's talk about your feeder cattle market, brought to you by Specialty Risk Insurance. They are working to protect your livelihood. Your real-time index on DV auction, what I was mentioning a while ago there, based on an 800-pound cash auction steer up through your middle 12 states, at the end of the Wednesday sales, sitting at 290.59, the first time it's ever been over 290, based on an 800-pound steer. Now, some of those 7 weights were making it do that. 290.50 would still be a really, really impressive quote just on a flat 800-pounder, but you're running from 7 to 899, and so some of those 2-weight cattle could either be fed or turned out weighing in the 7s, are causing that to be higher. But that 290.59 was up 73 cents, and just all of a sudden right here at maturity, your CME cash feeder cattle index was down 35 cents at 286.90. Now, how that happened, I don't know. But I got several sales I want to mention to you that are coming up here on DV Auction. Wilkinson, Gelvy, and Balancers in Colorado having their sale Saturday, the 29th at 2 o'clock Central. I talked to a friend of mine there in the area, and he said they have got some really nice bulls for sale there, guys, if you're interested in those. And then on Monday, I'm going to be going to Woodward, Oklahoma, just south of there, to CW Ranch and Cattle Company, and my buddy Ron Cunningham has put that sale together. Not going to be a lot of lots, but they've got some really, really fancy commercial pairs there. I mean, ranch pairs, and you could stock a ranch, I mean, in just a few minutes if you want to do that. Guy decided he wanted to clean the slate on those, and so he's going to do it. It's going to be Monday, the 31st here at 5 o'clock p.m. We are going to be having that from the sale there south of Woodward, but not expecting a huge crowd there, I wouldn't think. But more so, get on DVAuction.com and bid on those pairs. Really nice. And get on there early and look at some of the videos of them. Unbelievable. And then another sale that we got here today on Thursday is Stockman's Livestock Exchange in Dickinson, North Dakota. They have got a huge replacement special there. Gonna have over 1,000 head of them, and not a lot of heifers, but a lot of young cows and things. So check them out, Dickinson, North Dakota, on DVAuction.com. Let's talk about some of your big feeder sales on Wednesday. OKC West, El Reno, Oklahoma, DV Auction broadcaster, 8,100 head. The feeder steers were steady to $3 higher. The feeder heifers were $3 to $5 higher. The calves sold $5 to $8 higher. One of the biggest sales we had all week. Yet your CME cash feeder cattle index goes down. I don't know how that works there. But an individual quote that I thought, they had several, but the one I thought was the most impressive out El Reno on Wednesday was 70 head of steers, weighed 788 at 306. Now that's a Sand Hills, Nebraska type of quote there, guys. How about Dodge City, Kansas? Winter livestock had 4,000 head. And there's a first really good test they've had for a while. Feeder steers $10 to $12 higher. Feeder heifers $10 to $20 higher. Calves were not well tested. An individual quote out of Dodge City I thought was pretty nice. 63 steers weighed 971 at 260.10 winter livestock there. So good job for them. How about Hub City Livestock in Aberdeen, South Dakota? DVAuction broadcaster there, 6,400 head for their feeder cattle sale there on Wednesday. It was unevenly steady. They had some cattle with maybe a touch more condition last week, and a few of them sold a little bit higher in spots, but it was just kind of one way or the other from steady there. But boy, you talk about impressive. They were your National Beefwire Stickout Sale of the day. They had, look at this automated market report through Cattle Market Central. You see 468 head of 6-weight steers, average 653 at 334.48. 762 head of 7-weight steers, average 744 at 306.66. There were 784 head of the 8-weight steers. They averaged 842 at 292.80. And 691 head of 9-weight steers in Aberdeen, South Dakota at Hub City Livestock. They averaged 946 at 274.10. Look at some heifers. How about 948 head of 6-weight heifers? They averaged 661 at $300.95. Pretty impressive. 819 head of 7-weight heifers averaged 746 at 281.71. And 327 head of 8-weight heifers averaged 839 with a weighted average price of $272.66. Good job there at Hub City. Got some individual quotes from all around. How about Wichita Livestock Auction, which we've never talked about before, in Wichita Falls, Texas. Now this is an impressive quote, especially for where it sits, guys. They're not used to selling them like this. In Wichita Falls, Texas, they sell 121 steers, weighed 664, and bring 342. Hey, welcome to the Feeder Flash, Wichita Falls. How about Torrington Livestock Markets in Torrington, Wyoming? 235 head of lightweight steers weighed 479 and bring 445. That's a big one. But the most impressive quote that I saw anywhere on Wednesday, your Macrison No BS top quote for the day, indeed come out of Hub City Livestock in Aberdeen. It was 62 big steers weighed 905 and bring 290 and a half. And that's your Feeder Flash for Thursday.